So let me turn this on. All right, so thank you so much for giving us your evening this Wednesday in February. I hope everybody is doing well. I'm Sheila. I'm Signet Education's president and COO, which means I do a little bit of everything, and I tend to lead the webinars. I like to think of myself as a really great resource for clients and people who have questions about education. So always feel free to reach out to me with any questions related to high school or college applications or even graduate school. If I don't know the answer, I will get you connected to someone who does. But I'm very excited to do our webinar tonight on how to stand out in college admissions. And really the standing out is going to be the focus. I'm going to use the word differentiate a lot because I think it's so key for students to understand how they are unique. Because everybody is, right? Those of you with multiple kids knows that one kid is not like the next. And everyone has their unique stories, passions, values, strengths, areas for improvement. And I think it's really important for students to understand who they are, how they are unique, and then find a way to put that forward in everything that they do as a strength. So we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight, and in particular, how that kind of differentiation can help in the college admissions process. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Oh, that was the wrong button. Here we go. I am sharing this one. Someone give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen. Great. Okay. So I'm going to introduce my co-presenters tonight. First with us, we have Molly. Molly is one of our longest tenured consultants at Signet Education. She started in 2011 and has a very deep background in college admissions. She earned her BA in psychology from Gettysburg College and a master's of education in higher education administration from Penn State University. She has admissions experience in a number of different selective college admissions offices, including University of Pennsylvania, Case Western, and Oberlin College. She's read and reviewed over 7,000, I think it's fair to say now, college applications from across the United States. And she is a former student athlete and a big advocate for study abroad. We love when Molly works with our students. They're always just so pleased with the kind of guidance they're getting from her, and of course their results as well. So you all are really lucky that we got Molly tonight. And then I want to introduce you to Janos. Janos is the co-founder and program director of Polygens, an online research academy that helps high schoolers turn their passions into research projects. You can see where we're going with this, right? Polygens works with thousands of students and mentors every year on research projects ranging from artificial intelligence to quantitative biology to cultural anthropology. Janos co-founded Polygens in 2019 together with Jin Xiao in a Stanford dorm with a vision of democratizing access to research for all high school students. And before starting Polygens, Janos was a research associate at Harvard University working on practical implementations of quantum information processing devices. You'll have to ask him what that means. Janos completed a PhD in theoretical quantum physics at MIT in 2018 and holds a master's degree from the University of Cambridge. As an undergraduate at the University of St. Andrews, his research focused on making invisibility cloaks a reality by bending light rays around objects using optical cloaking devices. Janos is a passionate educator, having won the Henry Kendall Teaching Award for teaching electrodynamics to freshmen at MIT. He's a firm believer that project-based, personalized, and student-driven learning is the future of education. So we've got some heavy hitters here tonight, and I'm really excited for them to share some information with you. And I'm going to go through our agenda briefly. So the first thing we're going to do, I'm going to give it all away. I'm going to tell you the #1 secret, the absolute secret to getting in to college. Then we're going to talk about the importance of a personal vision and narrative in this process and how to plan strategically for the college process. We'll talk about how summer activities fit in and the value of independent research and research mentorships. Janos will tell us more about Polygens and some of the really awesome projects that his students have done and that their kind of admissions outcomes. And then we're going to try to leave a lot of time for question and answers because I'm sure you guys all have a lot. So with that, let's get to that secret. right? I'm sure you're all here because you know that the college admissions process is getting more and more selective. With the advent of electronic applications, which many of you who are parents now did not have when you were applying to college. I remember when I was applying to college, I did it on paper. There were 18 schools on the Common Application at that time. Now there are over 700. So with the advent of digital applications, application numbers have skyrocketed over the last, maybe 15 years. And then in these last 2 years with COVID and the advent of test optional policies, that becoming a lot more common, those application numbers have just continued to grow, which puts pressure on the admissions rates. So it's just even more selective at the top universities, and even at the not so top universities, depending on how you define them. It's just getting tougher. And it can really feel like a rat race. And it can feel overwhelming for a student. It can feel like there are too many demands on their time. Parents aren't really sure how to navigate this. It's been a while since you went through this process yourself, and things seem to be changing every day, right? But the one kind of truism and that ultimate secret that I want to tell you is the key is identifying a true interest and pursuing it to the level that seems appropriate for your student, right? And that may be something you've heard before, but I think we're going to take a slightly different angle on it today. It doesn't mean that a college application should look a certain way, but it does mean that you can use that guiding principle to help your student be the strongest candidate they can be, and more importantly, get the most they can out of their educational experience, right? Really, at Signet, our philosophy is that students should be chasing meaningful, rewarding experiences, things that they're truly interested in. And then the college application just becomes a really awesome documentation of all of those fantastic educational experiences they've had, right? So we kind of flip it on its head. You're not doing things to look good on a college application. You're doing them because you love them. And then your college application is going to look really great too, right? I also want to point out that, again, this is probably stuff you've all heard, but information without insight just leads to the same old results, right? So if you don't bring a certain type of insight and reflection to this process, you're going to end up doing what everybody else is doing. Or you're going to try to do as much as you possibly can and spread yourself too thin, or spread your child too thin. And you really want to take a step back and look for that insight, right? And that insight comes from what we call a personal vision, right? Vision is sort of your dream. Not that, you're going to change the world or end hunger or something like that, though it could be. It could just be, I want to live this nice life in a nice place and, have time to, do all the things that I care about. It could be a shorter term vision. I want to not spend 6 hours a night on my homework, but I still want to get good grades. It could be, I really want to become a doctor and help people in these specific ways. So vision can mean different things to different students, but it's a real motivator, right? And if a student can tap into their vision of their future, they will have intrinsic motivation because they care about that thing. And they will understand, if I want to do that thing that I care about, I have to take these steps, like, keep my grades up in college, be involved, form relationships with teachers and mentors. And it can also serve as a really important North Star, right? It's very easy to get pulled in all these different directions by extracurriculars, or what one aunt says about what worked for her kids and what the lady down the block says about what worked for her kids, and really feel like you don't know what to do. But if you can stay focused on that vision, then that's going to be kind of a filter for you. Should I do this thing? Does it fit in with my vision? Does it help me get closer to that vision? Then the answer, might be no or yes based on that, right? And so at Signet, we talk about identifying that vision and then zigzagging towards it, right? Sometimes you can be really strategic and plan. I'm going to, do this major in college, and then I will go to med school after doing X, Y, and Z. But sometimes you have to be opportunistic, right? Something may present itself to you and you have to decide, am I going to jump on this opportunity or not? right? And it may not be a direct line to your goal, but it may help you get a step closer or into the network that will help you get there, right? So you've got to be kind of opportunistic and strategic at the same time. Now, I know all of you are telling me, your teenagers have so many passions, or they don't have a passion, or it changes every week. And that's definitely true. But that's the process of discovering a vision, right? Trying a lot of things, getting exposed to a lot of things, talking to people who know things or have done certain careers, and finding out if that really resonates with them. And this is a place where, mentorship or even a kind of a coach, a life coach, can be really, really helpful for a student. Not mom or dad who might have a certain agenda or certain expectations, or, they have this really awesome career they would love their child to pursue. But someone who's not a parent, that they respect and look up to bounce ideas off of, someone to help them identify those skills and strengths, explore what a certain career or a path of study might entail, and then develop ways to test those things out to see if they really do stick. So a vision is really at the heart of our coaching program at Signet, and it does take time to develop. But if you can help your student discover that, and often it's really not about learning something new, it's about reflecting and paying attention to something they already know, right? And valuing it. But if they can find that sweet spot of meaningful growth, it's really transformational and totally empowering. And so I wanted to put that out there as something that we feel is really essential to the college process. If your student can figure this out, they're going to have an easier time putting the rest of it together. Right? They're going to know what they need and want out of their college experience. They're going to have some vision for career or an academic path. And those two things will inform what goes on their college list. And then putting those three things together can help them understand, what kind of applicant am I? Right? What are the strengths that I'm bringing to this school? What are the things that I'm going to take advantage of at this college because I have this particular career vision, or I have this particular desire for a certain type of community, right? So starting with that vision, it just kind of trickles out, flows down into all the different parts of the college application, right? And, at Signet, we also do admissions consulting. So this is a big part of it as well. We can help the student explore those needs and wants, and of course, crystallize those preferences and the vision and build a college list. And then from there, work backwards, just like we did with, the vision, understanding the steps you need to take to get there. But once we have that college list, we can also think about, what else can this student do to make themselves a great applicant for the types of colleges that are on their list, right? If we know that a certain type of college really prioritizes community engagement, well, that might be something to think about for the end of junior year and your summer before senior year, if it's not already a big part of your profile, right? So those sorts of things can help us work backwards and make a student fit a college a little bit better. But the key thing to remember is that this narrative, with all of these parts that kind of flow into it, is totally unique to your student. It's going to help them stand out from the rest of the candidates because it's a story only they can tell, right? And so you don't have to go chasing, the story that you think Harvard or Stanford or Yale wants, right? Because when you do that, it's sort of a recipe for looking like a lot of other applicants, right? But when you turn inward and focus on what's meaningful to me, what do I want to do, what do I want to learn, by definition, you are going to have a unique application, right? And that's the thing that's going to stand out. So one of the great ways to differentiate yourself and discover that narrative, or create a cornerstone for that narrative, is thinking really carefully about how your students spend their summer, right? It can be a great differentiator. And you don't have to think about doing something totally out of the box, right? We've had plenty of students who scooped ice cream all summer, and they learned all sorts of really great things from that, right? Interacting with people, a certain type of work ethic, or that they never want to work in food service again, and that might be a great motivator for them. And so it really doesn't matter what they do. It should just be something that fits with their, meaningful preferences. So I often tell students to do something unique or do something that fits your unique narrative, right? It could be a generic thing, but maybe it just fits into what you want to do or what you want to learn in some unique way. So those are some key things to keep in mind when you're thinking about summer. And this is really the time of year that we encourage our students to start planning their summer. A lot of programs might have deadlines in February or March. You have to plan ahead. If there's travel involved, you might have to budget. So definitely start looking into that, programs that are available. And there are a lot of choices. There are, traditional sleepaway summer camps, or counselor and training type programs at those camps now, if your students are older. There are academic programs on college campuses. There are courses you can take. There are travel programs that will take you to, a remote village in South America, and, you do something really cool there. And the thing to keep in mind, though, is like, if this is something that a lot of people might be interested in doing, you are going to have something that a lot of people also did on your record, right? Which is not a bad thing, because you might learn something unique from that experience. But if you're thinking about your larger personal vision, there might be some room to differentiate yourself with your summer activity, right? And Molly, I apologize. I'm flying through this. I should have invited you to join in. So maybe I'll invite you to jump in here and tell us about some of the kind of unique narratives your students have had, or how they've used their summer. And then I'll throw it to Janos.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Glad to be here this evening. As Sheila was talking, I was just thinking about one of the students that I'm working with right now who has ambitions to be a doctor someday. She's a senior in high school. And as you know, with the pandemic, a lot of volunteering in hospitals and healthcare facilities has been non-existent due to the risk of contagion. And so she was trying to find ways to get out there and get some more experience in the healthcare field. But she's also a rock climber and a hiker, and she was going to be conquering a number of peaks in her home state over the summer, with friends, without friends, and on some leadership excursions. And so as part of that, she went through a wilderness first aid and then a wilderness first aid responder training that was pretty intense and would really come in handy if she were caught in a situation or came across somebody else in a situation in the middle of the woods without cell phone service. And so she had to get a little bit creative to try and find that connection. I was also thinking about another student of mine who had ambitions to do some research on whales out in the ocean. And I know we'll be talking about research a little bit later, but there was one particular vessel off the West Coast in the San Juan Islands that she really wanted to work on, but they only took undergraduate and graduate students. And so she said, well, I'll have to wait until I'm in college. She was approaching her summer before senior year. And I told her, what does it hurt to reach out to them, to email them and say, look, I've taken these courses in high school that I think prepares me for this opportunity, as well as one of your undergraduates, and attach a resume. What is the harm in doing that? And so she ended up pursuing the position, and she was the first high school student they had ever hired to work on the vessel alongside them. So pairing that with an outward bound experience really gave her some strong insight into environmental science in a way that she hadn't ever experienced in the classroom. And that was an opportunity when we sat down and really talked about, if you could do whatever you wanted over the summer, what would that look like? And putting that dream out there and finding ways for us to put that into action. And that really paid off for both of those students in leading into other opportunities and eventually their college admissions.
Amazing stories. Thank you for sharing that. And we'll make sure you all have time to ask Molly more questions as we go on, because I totally skipped over you rushing through these slides, because I'm so excited to introduce you all to Janos. He's, as I mentioned, the founder of Polygens, and I've invited him here to share with us about, the program that he runs, and some examples of projects that his students have done, and the results that has had for the students in terms of their, deepening their academic interests or what came out of the mentorship, but also on their college application. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. Janos, you can start, and I will turn it over to you.
Great. Hi, everyone. Really glad to be here, and thank you for that introduction, Sheila and Molly. Those were truly amazing stories. And what I'd like to do is tell a little more about some of the work we've been doing with students to help them realize that vision that Sheila talked about and help them craft that unique story that is really theirs only and that makes them stand out. And I'll jump right in. But as I do that, I did want to tie back what we are doing here to my own personal experiences, which have also been guided by what Sheila described as mentorship and coaching. I am a theoretical physicist by training. I did my PhD at MIT, and I've had the good fortune of being coached by those mentors every step of the way. And my work and my research in theoretical physics and that journey would not have been possible without always having someone to rely on and someone to help me understand what the next steps are in realizing my vision for my life and my aspirations, and guiding me what the next steps are. And in this regard, I believe Sheila and Molly and the entire Signet team obviously is just a terrific resource, and I'm so glad to be here today and join forces with them to give you a bit of insight about how we think about crafting those personal stories. So Polygens is an online research academy that pairs high school students, typically with PhD level experts, to craft original research projects. And I am one of the co-founders of this organization. And indeed, our goal is to give access to research opportunities to high schoolers. Generally, it's really hard to find the mentor you need. But I will start by saying that you don't need something like Polygens. You can obviously go out there, email professors, email grad students, and find the mentor that you need. It might be just more work and might be more hit and miss, but there is by no means any barrier to finding your own path out there, even if you are looking for research mentorship. We help students who come to us because they want us to understand what their interests are, and sometimes even to help them articulate what their passions are. Sometimes we talk to students who feel they don't have a passion to build on. And we always feel that's not quite true. And Sheila also mentioned this. You might be interested in basketball, and that may not feel like a hugely academic passion, but in reality, you could do sports analytics and do a project around that. Or you might be interested in video games, and you might go out there and just start building a video game. These are all amazing endeavors that you might not at first sight think would lead to something presentable and remarkable, but in reality, as you build on things, you, as Sheila said, zigzag along the way, but eventually reach your goals. So just to give you a bit of a deeper understanding of how we work with students, we match students with mentors, and mentors typically are researchers, experienced professionals who have a unique background to guide students along their journey and academic discovery. So these are students from R1 research university. These are mentors from R1 research universities in all sorts of fields, both in the humanities as well as STEM and engineering and mathematics. And they all are not only excellent researchers and academics themselves, but also uniquely gifted teachers who know how to impart that knowledge to the next generation of scholars and are inspired to do that because they have, just like myself, benefited from that mentorship and want to pay it forward. And that's the kind of mentor you want, those who are motivated by nothing else but really that innate desire to have the next generation. And I also wanted to just walk you through some of the projects that students do. And this is really just to inspire you to think about what you could be doing if you are diving deep into your passions. So one story is that of Audrey, a 16-year-old from Mountain View, California, who really wanted to use AI to detect gender bias in politics. And this was during the 2020 presidential elections. And she had a hunch that especially female candidates might be represented differently in media. And obviously there is a lot of data out there, and the way you automate that analysis and do it at scale is to use AI. So Audrey was matched with a PhD student, Dora, at Stanford University, who is an expert at sentiment analysis. She has done that work at Google, and she was doing similar work at Stanford. And together they were able to, Dora was guiding Audrey, who was able to do a project about using NLP, or natural language processing, to perform large-scale text analysis and indeed discover some of those gender biases that exist in the media. The outcome was a research paper that was presented at ACL, one of the most esteemed NLP publications out there. And Audrey actually, despite being 16-year-old, well, actually by then she was 17 years old, was able to present there, and it was very well received, and even established researchers attended and noted what she did, and obviously that work was also published. And Audrey, actually, since she joined us when she was kind of younger, she is applying to college only next year, but we're really excited to see where she will be going next. Another story that I really like is from Victoria, who created a podcast on neurological disorders. And she was specifically inspired to pursue this because of the unique family background she has, where there are some people who have suffered from neurological diseases. So she did have that personal connection. She was, of course, also interested in neuroscience, and working with Deborah from, who was actually who holds a medical degree from Duke University and was at the time at the Yale University Hospital. She actually created a podcast, a seven episode podcast that explained what some of these neurological diseases are, what kind of medical, scientific, and social aspects they have. And she was able to address all of those and then publish her findings and thoughts on Spotify in that podcast series. And the reason I really love this story, because it shows that research might not culminate in a research paper. In fact, sometimes it's something even more creative, something that you can share with the world. And obviously this was a truly remarkable project. And she ended up getting into Brown early. And she did feel that doing this project was a real differentiator, as it really showed to everyone that she was able to do something that not others don't do. And I think we can all agree that you don't hear such stories every day. Yet another project that is remarkable revolves around mental health advocacy. And in this case, the student from Los Gatos High School here in California really created an advocacy group called Cats to Cats. And as part of this, she was able to start a small movement within her, within their robust network of students, making sure that there is social media presence built around it, that she was going into this leadership role and carrying it and making sure that it also survives after she graduates. And this was actually published as a YouTube channel promoting mental health awareness for teenagers. And again, here we are talking about a student on the younger side who then, who is still in high school, but looking forward to take some of these incredible achievements and showcase them in the college applications that are upcoming. And then there was also another student, Mark, who did computational analysis of cancer cells. And this was a truly remarkable project, very relevant in the age of COVID. It's essentially a quantitative modeling problem of mRNA sequencing. And Mark was working with Michelle from Princeton University, a postdoc. And had some coding experience, but was able to really pick up the skills needed to implement this project and write a peer-reviewed article that was accepted by the Journal of Emerging Investigators. And Mark actually ended up getting into UPenn. And obviously this project was a big part of the application as well. And this is a more traditional project with culminating in a peer-reviewed publication. And we do see a lot of students gravitating towards those research papers because becoming a published author as a high school student, I think, is a remarkable achievement. And many of them feel that it really highlights their achievement. But as I mentioned with some of the previous projects, of course, it can take various forms. And this is just one topic I wanted to spend a couple of minutes on. There are journals, and many people don't know, but high schoolers do have an ecosystem of journals to rely on, which very often only accept publications from high school students. One such publication is the International Journal of High School Research. Another one that is actually relatively well known, the Concord Review, which actually is only for humanities projects. We have quite a few humanities projects, as Sheila mentioned, even anthropology and fashion history, just general history and literature and so forth. And for these projects, the Concord Review is an excellent outlet. It's very selective, but students who work hard have a good chance of getting accepted, especially if they are coached by the mentor about the formatting and publication requirements. Then there is JEI, Journal of Emerging Investigators. It's actually focused on the biological sciences only. And then there is the general Journal of Youths in Science, which accepts publications from all sorts of areas. And obviously getting published in any of these journals is a great achievement. And one thing we do for students, we maintain a large database of publications that students can go to and some of the requirements and things they need to know before they submit. And then obviously there are a number of great competitions. The Regeneron ISEF competition, which used to be called the Intel Science Competition. There is the MIT Think Scholars Program, Davidson Fellow Scholarship, and so forth. These are just a couple of the many, many competitions that are out there to help students distinguish themselves. And then returning to this for the third time, there are outlets that many students wouldn't think of, such as Spotify, personal blogs. We've had a student publish an op-ed in Politico, another one actually in the Chronicle of Higher Education. So of course, many other outlets depending on what you do research on. And here is yet another more expanded list. And I'm just showing this so you know that the options are virtually limitless in this case. At Polygens, we also feel that research has to be rigorous. And we support projects of all kinds, but specifically specifically research papers done by high schoolers do have a long history. Obviously, research papers are what students write when they get to college. And at Polygens, we are proud to partner with the University of California at Irvine, specifically their subdivision called Getty, which is the Gifted and Talented Institute. And through them, offer college credit for research papers completed as part of their paper writing program. And with this partnership, we have had hundreds of students basically be able to do work that is so rigorous that they are able to receive college credit. And all of these research papers are graded by UCI faculty. And obviously that means they get credit that they can show on their transcript. And when they get to college, they can actually get credit for those credits, meaning that they have to do less once they are in college. This is obviously a great opportunity that students have really made good use of. And here I just wanted to highlight one story, because we all love these stories, from Luke, who is a freshman at MIT. And I recall interviewing Luke myself. He was expressing interest in doing research, and he was so thoughtful and articulate about wanting to do psychology, but he was less sure what he wanted to do. And what we were able to do, we were able to match him with a Stanford postdoc called Gabor, and they were able to brainstorm things that was of interest to them. And it was fascinating to see their project idea undergo multiple iterations and eventually landing on things related to people's mental health during COVID. And they were able to do surveys and explore how people were feeling. And today they are submitting Luke's work to actually a peer-reviewed journal that is for psychology professors. So this is not even a high school journal. And as Luke said, he used this research that he did, and he highlighted it in the supplemental materials section, in the essay to describe his own passions in the world of academia. And he felt that such a project was a perfect way to display his intellectual interests as well as his own initiative and passion. And I think that couldn't be more true. Luke was just a terrific student who really invested the effort needed to distinguish himself through a unique project. And I'm really proud of how far he came from that conversation I had where he had such difficulty articulating what exactly within psychology he wanted to do and where he is today. So at Polygens, what we see is that students who do research do really well in terms of college applications. So we have seen 95% of our students being accepted to R1 universities. Obviously, it does reflect that our students love research, so they will gravitate towards R1 top research universities. But then we also, in terms of applications, but we have also seen that 78% did end up going to one of those top research universities, which suggests to us that those people who have this training of doing research in high school eventually do feel that that path is indeed alluring and want to stay on that academic journey. And 79% of these students did highlight their project in their essays. And so we have seen that being a really effective technique, as well as highlighting, about 54% highlighted their project in their interview. And obviously we have a lot more statistics, but I just wanted to highlight a couple here. Just briefly, to make sure we have plenty of time for questions, at Polygens, the admissions process is really quite simple. So there is an online application that students can use. And we are really proud to be working with Signet. I know Sheila, we met over 2.5 years ago before the pandemic at a conference. Now it feels like it's been ages really. And since then we've been really aligning around how best we can support students. So we are really proud to work with Signet. And as a token of that, we are really glad to offer a 10% tuition break for students who are affiliated with Signet. And students can just fill out the application, which takes 20 minutes. There is an interview, which usually takes 15 to 30 minutes to make sure that you are a good match for the program. And then students are matched with a mentor within 1 to 3 weeks and complete the program in 3 to 5 months. Now, I did want to point out that the program is not 2.5 months, not 2 months. Doing research takes time. So what we see not being ideal is when a student comes to us at the end of August wanting to complete a research project because suddenly they realize applications are around the corner. So we do encourage students to start early. You can complete things in 3 months, but then you have to be very rigorous about it. And specifically, publication does take longer. So if you submit to the Journal of Emerging Investigators, it might take up to 3 to 6 months to get published. Now, of course, even after you submit it, you can highlight on your application and resume that you have the paper under review, and that's already a huge deal. But the earlier you start and the sooner and the younger you start thinking about these research programs, the more of a chance you have to of getting published in top peer-reviewed high school or undergraduate research journal and highlighting that on your application. And then finally, just a brief overview of the program. Every journey is unique, as Sheila said. Like there is just no one-size-fits-all way of doing things. But generally, we see students start with an intro session. By session 3, students and mentors converge on what the abstract should be and what research question they want to answer. And by session 4, they have a 1-page outline of the project structure. And then by session 6, we like to see the first draft of at least part of the project. And by session 9, the first draft of the entire project, and after the 10th meeting, students are usually ready to submit the final draft and be essentially done and ready to highlight what they've done and communicate it to the outside world. So I know that was quite a bit. I did want to get through the slides quickly, so we have plenty of time for questions. And with that, I'll pause here and happy to take questions and continue the discussion with Sheila and Molly.
Thank you, Janos. I want to highlight one of the reasons I'm so excited about your program is, number one, your organization and our organization is so aligned, as you said, on our educational philosophies. Mentorship is sort of at the center of it. Finding what uniquely moves you and pursuing that is also at the center of it. Another reason I really like this is because it's not just a thing where you go and you do something and then you leave. This is a project that becomes part of your life. And hopefully becomes part of your future direction. And I know if your mentors are anything like the mentors at Signet, we stay in touch with our students. We really invest in their success. We love hearing those updates, and they come back around in some way, and we like to keep tabs on them. But the other thing that's really nice about this is it's COVID proof. And I think so many families are struggling to know what to do this summer because you don't know, is there going to be a new variant? Is things are things going to be in person? So that's another thing that I'd like to highlight here, and one of the reasons I invited Janos to come talk to us today. So with that, we will open it up for questions. Feel free to put your questions in the chat or take yourself off mute and ask. It can be about research mentorship. It can be about anything else in the college process. You've got a bunch of experts here, so please do take advantage of this time. Don't make me call on somebody. I will do it. All right, well, I have a question, Janos. I know a lot of your students come in with some skills already, but it sounds like some of those projects that they do requires them to build new skills, coding skills, learning about AI. What would you tell us if I asked you, what percentage of your students come in with a lot of those skills already, or how many of them learn it during the course of their project?
That's an excellent question, and it's really almost evenly split. Some students are just so impressive that when I look back, I'm like, wow, when I was in high school, I had none of those skills. But then we also have many students who really are looking to those mentors to guide them. And I'll know that these mentors we have, they are not, they don't do the traditional kind of tutoring that Signet mentors do, and where Signet is your best resource. But they will be able to point you to the things that you need to pick up, or potentially some online resources like Khan Academy or something else. And so they are able to guide you in that way. And we have seen students come very, very long way. For example, picking up coding skills. And if given enough time, the project can be your best guiding force as to what you need to learn and be so much more effective. We are actually big believers in project-based education, and we've seen that acceleration when you do have that motivation because you have a project to complete.
That's great, thank you. We've got a couple of questions from the audience. Molly, I think I'll let you take a stab at some of these. First, Hayden asked, what are some application tips for students who don't know what they want to do? And related, Sarah asked, what are the best methods to use to help your child find their passions? I think those two things are probably related, so maybe you can address both of those for us.
Sure. Yeah, great question. And I was just talking to a group of students yesterday. These were freshmen in high school, and explaining to them that college today and the college exploration process is not linear. It is very much a zigzag process. I like music, therefore I'm going to join a band. I joined the band and I found that I don't like creating music with other people. I'm more of somebody who does it by myself. So then I start my individual composition space using my computer and GarageBand and that sort of thing. I have found that with students, having experiences that eliminate certain areas can be just as important as adding certain areas. A tip that I will offer you is a student of mine who recently expressed an interest in the field of business and finance. She didn't have anybody in her family in that field, but thought that it might be a good step for her in college. And so she set up informational interviews over the summer to meet with different people. Her goal was to meet with one person a week for a Zoom interview about 45 minutes long to ask them about, what do you do from 8 to 5 every day? What does your work-life balance look like? How often do you spend time with other people versus spending time in front of your computer? And so she took notes on, investment bankers and accountants and attorneys that work within the financial field to learn what she liked about all of those different positions and what she didn't like. And so then she parlayed that into a leadership role at her school during her senior year, because what she learned is so much of finance and being in the business world is leadership and your ability to communicate with other people. So what I encourage students to do is to really start early. You don't need to have a college path. I need to do this to get that starting in 9th grade, but it's really great to have different experiences to figure out what it is you might like to do. So the summer after 9th grade is definitely not too early to maybe get a job, have an internship, or volunteer to gain those experiences to figure out what that's going to lead to for the next year. And I think one of the questions was kind of about the age as well, to start thinking about summer programs. And if you have a student who's motivated and confident and excited to start this exploration of different areas, then I think that, the year after 9th grade is a great time to start that. I'll offer one more tidbit about that. I often hear from families who say, I think, I want my child to have an experience with maybe computer science or AI. We were talking a little bit more about that. And I've heard that Harvard has a great summer program. And I think that's what's going to be most impressive to the colleges. And, what I usually tell the families is that anybody can get into the Harvard summer program for high school students. It's more what you take away from that experience. So what are you going to do with that experience in AI and computer science, taking it to the next step? Once you're done with that class, that's what's really going to make you different versus just sitting and marking that off on your resume.
Thank you, Molly. That's so helpful. I think one thing I would add is, I feel like students think they have to have an answer for what they want to do or what they want to be when they grow up. And the truth is you don't. And I think most of the adults in the room will tell you, like, they still don't know what they want to be when they grow up, because that changes all the time. And we also live in a changing world where, the idea of having a career path is not really all that relevant to a lot of students these days. I mean, they're going to do something, but it might not look like a straight line from here to there. So I encourage students to just think about, what do you already like doing? And what do you already think you're good at? Right? Because those are things that can lead you to figure out what you might want to study or what you might want to try, as Molly was saying, to see if it's really a fit for you. So I think it's important to reflect in that way and experiment in that way before you start your college applications. Okay, so it's never too early to start thinking about a vision, as Molly said. I wanted to mention that as well. I do think starting in the middle of junior year to think about, like, oh, I guess I should get involved, or I guess I should let my teachers know that I'm a human being and I actually speak, because you haven't spoken at all in high school. It's a strategy, better late than never, but certainly you want to be an engaged learner throughout high school, and be creative in how you spend your time throughout high school. I would say there's a question here of, there's a rising 9th grader, so current 8th grader, who wants to enjoy his summer, and is that okay? Molly, I'm gonna let you answer that one.
Yeah, I always tell students it's a real balancing act for your summer. You only have so many summers before you go off to college, and you can actually have a lot of fun doing some sort of, ice cream scooping, as was referenced earlier, and take away a lot of wonderful experiences that have helped you grow as an individual. And what's fun? Making money is fun too. And even if it's the minimum wage, students seem to enjoy that. And there are many ways that a student can find to tap into different areas of service on a limited basis that kind of introduces them into that world over the summer, that are not terribly taxing and still allows them to sleep in and get together with friends and, you know, climb a tree for one last summer before they get to high school. So figuring out what that balance for your student is going to be the key for you as a parent.
Thanks. We've got a couple of questions for Janos here. For a busy junior, when is the best time to get started on a research project?
Generally, actually, most of our students are busy juniors. So I think as they head towards the summer, thinking about summer plans early and potentially starting the application process now. So we do have the summer priority deadline coming up, the 15th of February. And then most students who get in now and kind of settle on the summer plans do end up having most of their meetings during the summer window. So starting early to mid-June or end of June at the latest, and then powering through things during the summer. What we generally find is that when rising seniors hit the application season, by then it's best to have the project wrapped up. So that's why it's good to start early. And generally speaking, I think now is a very good time to start thinking about those summer plans. There was another question about business-related research opportunities.
Yeah, please.
And we do have actually quite a bit of interest, both in terms of finance, economics, and business-related projects. Some of them take the form of analyzing investment portfolios. Some others really think about how the trade war during the previous administration affected some of the businesses. We also had students do projects on personal finance. So there are really a wide range of opportunities and obviously great mentors. Remarkably, these are truly mentors who just want to help students. We have had hedge funds employees, investment bankers, mentor students for us. So that's not a promise, that's more the exception, but business people have been remarkably intent on fostering the next generation of business leaders. There was a question about how you find, well, I think those were answered, but Keenan did ask about what it takes for an adult to get into a PhD program. And I'll answer this, even though this is about high schoolers.
Sure.
You have to show some kind of research experience. And I think that ties into high schoolers as well. Like colleges are looking for evidence that people are independent thinkers and are able to do research. And it's kind of the same for those applying for PhD programs, just at a higher level. And yeah,
Other questions? Nobody?
So I'll perhaps answer one question,
Sure.
just my take on how students can find their passions. And basically what we find is that many students struggle with that the most, at least when they come to us. Then they are like, well, there are all sorts of possibilities. How can I kind of explore all those options? And generally for us, the application process is a time of exploration, where when we talk to the student and try to really get a sense of what they would love to do most. And then that exploration process continues with the mentor during the first 3 sessions, as I mentioned, because basically mentors have this ability to see those early hesitations and concerns and worries and gradually guide students towards a specific project. And by digging deeper and deeper, have them really get laser focused on a specific project or topic.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and that's something that I would just suggest broadly is like connect with someone who can be in a mentor role for your student. And it might not be a PhD mentor, it might not be an admissions consultant or a tutor or a coach. It might be a teacher at their school or a sports coach or an older cousin or something like that. There are a lot of people out there whom your students would really benefit from learning from. So encourage that and encourage, I don't think this is a real word, but like a mindset of menteeship, right? That your student can learn from anybody, even their own classmates, even younger siblings, right? And if they're learning from other people at all times, then this sort of relationship will come very naturally. Jenny has a question for you, Janos. Is there anyone else involved in the process in addition to the mentor, or is it just the student and the mentor?
We actually really value that student-mentor relationship. That one-on-one, customized, personalized relationship that develops is very important. During the admissions process, we like to have the parent involved as well, because we feel that's very helpful in setting expectations and making sure we land on a project that is really the most beneficial for the student. But beyond that, we want students to be in the driver's seat of their education. And indeed, that's what colleges look for, that independence, that ability to do something where they own the whole thing. And that includes owning the relationship with the mentor. I hope that answered Jenny's question.
Great. Well, we're about out of time here. I'm going to put my email in the chat, and you will all get an email with this information as well. And our website is signeteducation.com. Polygens is polygens.com.
Yeah, I just...
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Janos. So feel free to reach out to us, check out our website. I know we're always happy to talk. So feel free to reach out with any questions you might have. We'll get them answered for you. And thank you again for coming. And thank you, Molly and Janos, for joining me tonight.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful, and it was great to meet everyone.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.